Okay, the left, or rather to say the left hand side of the cube. I'm sorry, to say that the left hand side of the cube. And here, if you look at the right hand side of the cube, so actually the plane that is forming is neither of them. The plane that is forming is neither the right hand side or the the right side of this cube, left cube, or the left side of this right cube. Rather, the plane that is forming is having the Miller indices, which is intermediate between these two. This left hand side of this eastward facing cube and the right hand side of this southwest facing cube or something. No? So there is a unique boundary plane. Always remember one thing: a tilt boundary always gives a unique boundary plane. Okay, I will tell you why did I say this. There is a this is a way to distinguish between a tilt and a twist boundary. But okay, let me complete the tilt boundary first. So always make note of this: that a tilt boundary will always have a unique grain boundary plane. There is no the grain boundary plane doesn't merge with any of the planes of the adjoining grains. Okay, or adjoining, for example, here it is not the same as any of the planes of the adjoining crystals. This one or this one. Okay, so now let's look at this tilt boundary. So we have looked at it. Now we have also described it a bit, because we have said rotation axis is parallel. Okay, so this is the rotation axis and this is parallel to the grain boundary plane, isn't it? Correct. So we have said that that is parallel to the grain boundary plane. Now, so here, so what do we say? So now it's a bit tricky. I will explain you each and every part. Don't worry about looking at both these images. Very simple thing. So now if you look at this unique grain boundary plane, it looks something. So now you just have to see. Now consider yourself as looking facing towards the, or rather to say, as looking through this side. Okay, looking through this side of the cube. Okay, consider yourself looking through this side of the cube, or consider yourself cutting a section out of this grain boundary plane. Okay, you cut a section out of the grain boundary plane and look at it in a straight fashion. Okay, don't look at it in a tilted fashion, otherwise you will be confused. So if you cut a portion of the grain boundary plane, you will see two things. The first thing is, don't think of anything here. Okay, or don't think of anything here. First I will tell you. So suppose this is the grain one. Okay, this is the atomic arrangement along the grain one. This first two, all these columns and the first two columns and all the rows. Don't consider the third one and the fourth one, because there is some problem. There is a discontinuity. I will tell you what are these. So if you consider the first two columns, okay, so first two columns along all the grains. So let us consider that as the atomic arrangement along this, along this cube. Similarly, if you look at this case, we look at the second crystal, and you see that there are two columns. Okay, there are two columns here, along all the rows. Don't consider the third and the fourth one here. So you can say that this one and so these two and the last two and the first two are actually the atomic arrangement along the grain 2 and the grain 1 respectively. Correct. So this is grain 1 atomic arrangement, grain 2 atomic arrangement. So now, if you now approach this, towards this boundary. So exactly the boundary, so along the boundary, what the thing that happens is that the atomic plane is actually, the grain boundary plane. So you are actually looking at the grain boundary plane, correct? So here, when you approach the boundary, or exactly where, if you look at the boundary, you will have this thing as there is a discontinuity at the boundary, which means that here, if you carefully observe, okay, so if you carefully observe this grain boundary plane, there the atomic arrangement, okay, see the atomic arrangement here and here are also the same. That is not the problem. So here and here are also the same. Everywhere it's the same. But the thing is, orientation is different. Why? Because this kind of atomic arrangement, or this arrangement actually is what is tilted with respect to this atomic arrangement by a certain angle theta. Correct? Or okay. Do you understand this part? Now let me ask you. This is, I've spoken too much of it. Guys, yes or no? Did you understand anything at this part, or what is too difficult? Right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
You understood? Oh, very good. Okay, so now let me again repeat it for the guys who didn't follow, because see this part is something which is which forms the preamble to everything. Okay, to grain boundary, everything. If you want to understand grain boundary, this is the first part you have to understand. See. what I said is that you cut a section out of the grain boundary. Okay, and I said one thing wrong. Don't look at this side of the grain boundary either, because this side of the grain boundary will not be able to see anything like this. What you have to do, I will tell you. I made a mistake. Okay, so see what I should not have said that. Okay, so if you look at this boundary plane here, you cut a section of the boundary and look at it from the top. So that's what, no, see, there should be some logic. See, if you look at from the top, what you see is that if you take, so this is the boundary, right? And definitely the boundary should have a certain thickness. I mean, the boundary has a certain thickness, isn't it? The boundary is having a certain thickness. And if you look at all the atomic layers here, all the atomic layers, you can see all the atomic layers here. And similarly, if you look at all the atomic layers along the second crystal, so this is all the atomic layers along the second crystal. And you are looking. Now imagine yourself to be looking, along the rotation axis, or looking from the top of this bicrystalline arrangement, or the two crystal arrangement. So what do you see? So this atomic arrangement and this atomic arrangement within the bulk are the same, isn't it? Because they both of them are the same composition, but the orientation is different. Why am I saying orientation is different? I'm saying because the meso orientation. You see this atomic arrangement, which is having a certain meso orientation of equal to theta with respect to the atomic arrangement along the second grain. I mean, out of the second grain. So this is the reason why I call it a boundary. So you can say one thing. You can say one thing. See, the grain boundary, of course, will have the coordination number. And if you think of the coordination number, now if you look at this atom, look at this atom, look at this atom, look at this atom. So, and you look at all these atoms. So what do you see? You see that these atoms are, well surrounded by, a fixed number of atoms, right? But if you look at the boundary, a boundary also has certain number of atoms surrounding it. Maybe suppose if you consider an atom here at the boundary, it might have an atom here, and here, which are surrounded. But now it is directly surrounded by how many atoms? 1, 2, 3. Okay, in this case. But now if you look at an atom here, it is surrounded by how many atoms? 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, definitely. I mean, so this diagram can also tell you one more thing, that if you look at an atom along a boundary, this atom will definitely have a higher surface energy, because of course, why has a high energy? Why it is in a higher energy state as compared to an atom here? Because it is not surrounded by the same number of atoms at the interface or at the boundary, any kind of boundary. But okay, now let's consider only till boundary. Any kind of boundary, it is not, any atom will not be surrounded by the same number of atoms as compared to an atom which is present in the bulk, or any atom which is present in the bulk. Here also, no, 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 number of atoms. So if the coordination number is 4, here the coordination number will be how much? 1, 2, and 3. Right? There is no atom here. There is a discontinuity. Similarly, for an atom here, there will be a discontinuity. Right? I mean, the atom here is a discontinuity. Only 1, 2, and 3 atoms will be surrounding it. Okay. So this is something which gives you another idea that a grain boundary is always a region which has a higher energy that is associated with it. Okay, and this is a kind of surface energy. Okay, if you now last class I have already talked a bit about it. I mean, this is a kind of surface energy, but this surface energy is not linked with the free surfaces. This surface energy is linked with two crystals, or this is a solid surface energy. Okay, with two different orientations. If there is a solid surface energy with two different orientations, we call this additional energy as the grain boundary energy. Okay, and remember one thing. When I don't know. Just let me ask you one thing. I mean, it's out of curiosity, don't mind it. Guys, have you been taught about these phase diagrams, right? Yes or no? Phase diagrams? Any?
Yes.
Okay, phase
Yes,
diagrams. Okay. So in phase diagrams, how do you construct a phase diagram? It's simple. I mean, no need to tell me everything. Just one or two words or something. I mean, from what? Okay, like thermodynamically. I'm just asking you a bookish question only, but still.
From the free energy
Free energy
curves
curves.
of different
Okay, very good,
phases.
very good. So in free energy curves, that's what I'm asking. So in free energy curves, what energy do you consider? Do you consider only bulk free energy, or do you consider or do you consider this thing also, surface energy also? Do you consider that?
Both of them.
No.
Yes, the volume as well as the surface.
Can you consider both the volume and the surface? Again, relook into it. Is it volume and surface? Sure, cannot be. Why I can tell you, but okay. Can you tell me why?
Because from nucleation we consider
Uh-huh.
the energy from nucleation. It has two factors, right? One which
Correct.
is due to the volume,
Mhm.
and one contribution to the
Contribution to
volume,
the
and one
the
contribution to
surface.
the energy
Surface.
created. free
So that is
energy,
the surface.
surface related.
Correct. So if you look at this free energy diagram, then I mean I think again we relook into this free energy diagram, because see, I will tell you why. You again relook it and let me know in the next class. I will tell you why. See, if you consider this surface energy, now if you consider the surface energy and try to plot it in this phase diagram, the entire, so the problem would be, whenever you look at any phase, So for example, I'll give you a simple example. You look at alpha, okay? Look at alpha
Okay.
ferrite.
Okay, you're asking regarding the construction of phase diagram.
No. That's what I'm saying. In construction of phase diagram, I said which
We
kind of.
don't consider only, yeah.
Yes. Can you? Oh, very good. So can you tell me why do you not consider this grain boundary energy? I mean, how? I mean, why? I mean, what is the logic? Why don't you consider grain boundary energy? Right? You can have done that, no? I mean, then what would be the problem? If you would have considered grain boundary energy, what is the problem with the phase diagram? Any idea? Simple. Think simply. Easy. Nothing bookish. Very simple. Anyone can speak up. It's very simple. Just speak. Are you getting ideas, or are you thinking something, or?
Actually, your voice is not, I mean, the level of your voice is not constant. If you could repeat once again.
Okay. I see. What I asked is, now you are considering that when you are trying to plot phase diagram, you are considering free energy versus composition diagram, isn't it? I mean, for different temperatures, correct? And trying to look at the stability of different phases, and then whichever phase has the lowest free energy, you just consider that phase as a stable phase at that temperature, correct? That is the principle, right? How you are able to construct phase diagram, correct?
Yes.
Correct. So now tell me one thing. Now that energy which you consider is the bulk free energy, right? Now in place of the bulk free energy, now think that you would have considered along with the bulk free energy, you would have also considered the surface energy. Then what would be the case? So what would be the problem with the phase diagram? See, phase diagram के बारे में you just think, what would be the problem? I will also give you one hint. See, in phase diagram, there are well-defined, these things. So well-defined temperatures, well-defined compositions, well-defined lines, well-defined curves. We call it curves. Liquidus, solidus, thousands of things. Solvers, different solvers. Solvers is more complicated. So, any idea if you would have considered this gamma also along with that?
Like true equilibrium configuration have not been achieved.
Correct. So what would have happened?
So that way the perfect lines would not have been formed.
Correct.
Then the
Yes.
points would have given.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So if that is, see, that's what I wanted to tell you. See, the entire moral of the story, what I have told you, is that the moral is, you can use phase diagram to to think of, okay, that when you are to think of microstructures in an ideal case. I mean, of course you should use phase diagrams for, phase diagrams are very useful for a number of things. For example, when you are casting it, okay, for casting any material at a given temperature, now especially when you are solidifying it, or whenever you are but that too at a very slow rate, of course, or when you are transforming any phase, any phase, when you are doing a very slow cooling, I mean, generally a very slow cooling. The phase diagram cannot be used for a fast cooling, right? I mean, it is not possible to use it. But now, you cannot consider a phase diagram. You cannot use the phase diagram to predict. I mean, from here comes the basic theory, is that if you use the phase diagram to predict the phase transformation in presence of defects, for example, if you have a defect like a dislocation, or if you have defects like, you have a number of boundaries in a given material, and then, I mean, in a given phase, and as a result, it is not following the transformation sequence that should happen in a phase diagram. And also, for example, if you are cooling the material very fast, for example, a piece of steel, you can cool it very slowly to get PLite at room temperature. But suppose your piece of steel, you have just put it in, thrown it in water, or quenched in water, you are forming martensite. Definitely, in phase diagram, you will not be able to see martensite. Why? Martensite, why? Can you tell me why you cannot see martensite in phase diagram? Why? Why can you not see martensite in iron carbon phase diagram? Any idea? Why can you not see martensite in a phase diagram? I told the answer already.
There will be too many defects. That's why.
Defects. Okay, very good. But okay, that is the second answer, and that is linked with this. But the first one is what? The first one in martensite. I mean, in the context of martensite and perlite thing, I said very fast cooling. Very fast cooling means what? There is also a, along with temperature, there is something. There is time factor, right? There is time factor which is associated with it. The cooling rate is very fast, so it doesn't take time at all. And phase diagram is only meant for equilibrium configurations, right? You already said this word equilibrium. Equilibrium means what? In metallurgy, anything, even in chemical equilibrium or mechanical equilibrium, equilibrium means something which has to progress infinitesimally. We call it infinitesimally slow. I mean, it should proceed slow. I mean, definitely, if you look at the phase stabilities in metallurgical systems, what you see is that any kind of equilibrium cooling or something, you have to cool it extremely slowly. Okay, extremely slowly in a sense that an ideal phase diagram is constructed when you take when you cool the material at an infinitesimally slow rate, or at the cooling rate is tends to nearly is about zero. But it is not possible, right? In practical world, you cannot have a cooling rate near about zero. I mean, if that is the case, then you will take a material to cool forever. And that is not the. I mean, that is not possible, right? You have to cool it up within a stipulated time. So of course, you can, I mean, you can use the phase diagram for a number of things, but of course, remember one thing: phase diagrams cannot be used for everything. I mean, you also have to come across a number of other things. But again, I'm telling you again and again. Even the other diagrams like the TTT diagram, that is called the transformation temperature diagram, or the continuous cooling transformation diagram, CCT diagram, or something, that won't be able to at all accommodate for any defect concentration in the microstructure. For example, if there is a defect concentration at a grain boundary, and so here, suppose now you look at this. I will explain you this in a short while. Now you look at these defects, okay? So these are dislocations. So dislocations will have a certain strain energy. Okay, I already told you in one of the classes. Now this grain boundary already has an extra energy which is known as the grain boundary energy. So the energy will be very high along the boundary. So as a result, there is a huge chance, there might be, I mean, I'm not saying in all cases, there might be a huge chance that along this boundary, there might be the formation of some phase, or there might be the formation of some precipitate at the boundary, which cannot be accommodated by the phase diagram. I mean, because the phase diagram is only going to consider your free energy in the bulk. It is not going to consider the free energy at the surface, or rather the grain boundary energy. So that is, remember this thing always. So don't have to remember all the things, just remember one thing, that phase diagram uses only the bulk free energy. It doesn't use the surface free energy. And why? And if you would have tried to think that it can use the surface free energy, then definitely the entire idea of phase diagram would not be valid, because a phase diagram is always constructed under equilibrium cooling. Equilibrium cooling, I mean, you give rise to equilibrium microstructure. Equilibrium cooling means you cool it very slowly, and ideally it is infinitesimally slow. I mean, that is not possible. I mean, in practical world, that is not possible. Okay, in theory, or in dream world, that is possible. That might happen. I can think, but then in real life, it's not possible. So always remember that when you have defects, a huge amount of defects in the microstructure, phase diagram predictions might go wrong. You cannot use that. Okay. So okay. Now let's come back to the point. So just I wanted to interact with you. So I asked a number of questions. So don't mind. Okay. So if you come across this, now you see that there is some discontinuity, right? You're seeing some discontinuity of the atomic planes here at the boundary, and there is some space, some empty space. So actually, there is one very good model. Last time I think I just mentioned the name of the model that is known as this. Let me remember. So it's called the Reed-Shockley model. I think I have put it in the next slide. But okay, Reed-Shockley model. So these are, don't worry about this name. So these both are the scientists who actually proposed this model. So you look at this, this discontinuity. And if you now, it's the same thing. Okay, this diagram and this diagram, there is no difference. Only difference, I'll tell you what. I mean, this difference is coming only at this junction, or only at the interface. Otherwise, everything other than that is the same. I will tell you. So you look at the atomic arrangement here. You look at the atomic arrangement here. Same atomic arrangement here. Also, it's the same atomic arrangement. Same atomic arrangement. Now, the difference. Where is the difference? So, and also the other thing I will show you. So that if you have the lattice translational vector, now see an atom from here to here, here to here, here to here, here to here. Similarly, if you look at in the vertical direction, here to here, here to here, here to here. So all these are B. B is nothing but what? What is B? Bugger's vector, right? I told you one of the earlier classes that I think the class previous or before that class. The Bugger's vector is nothing but the lattice translational vector. What is lattice translational vector? It is the vector, or it is the distance. If you look at the magnitude, I'm not talking about the direction. If you look at the magnitude of this vector, it is the distance by which an atom travels during slip or during the slip deformation, okay, or during the plastic deformation, isn't it? So along the slip line and in the slip direction. So don't worry about that because I've already covered that. So just think that these two are the dislocation. I mean, these two are the Bugger's vector. Okay. Now suppose you have a discontinuity at the interface or at this junction. So basically, what you can consider is that you have this atomic plane, but this is not going to continue, isn't it? I mean, see, this atomic plane is broken. Similarly, here you see this atomic plane gets broken here. Similarly, the atomic plane is broken here also, isn't it? I mean, there is no continuation, discontinuity, and here there is discontinuity. So you look at this plane. So basically, this diagram, this plane is nothing but this plane, this atomic plane. Okay, this is discontinuous. Similarly, if you look at this very carefully, if you look at this plane is nothing but this plane. Okay. Similarly, the third plane that you consider, this plane continues here, and okay, it ends here. So this plane, okay. So I'm talking of this plane, this atomic plane, okay, which is not continuous. No, you see, there is a lot of empty space here. So, I mean, it's not empty space. We call it something, but don't worry, we don't have to learn that much. But I mean, I'm just telling that. See, the entire point is. So we have. So what kind of dislocations are these? So we have. So basically we form some dislocations at the boundaries. Okay. So what kind of dislocations are these? Anyone? What is
edge dislocation?
Edge. Is it positive or negative? I mean, just a curiosity. Positive edge dislocation or negative edge dislocation? Positive or negative?
Positive, I guess.
Why positive? Any ideas? Simple. So it is pointing upwards, isn't it? And there is a
the notation, I guess.
Yes, the notation. Yeah, the notation. Yeah, of course. So that you have to say very clearly, right? I mean, in interview, people can ask you these things. So they will show you a symbol of this and edge dislocation and ask you, because I have been asked this question once in life. So there is this is an edge dislocation, and then they said, okay, so what kind of edge dislocation this is? And then I was thinking, okay, for 2 minutes, oh wow, I already said edge dislocation. What else do I need to say? Oh wow, then now this is a positive edge dislocation because of the same notation. Okay, so be confident in what you say, isn't it? So so this is a positive edge dislocation, but not necessarily that you will always have a positive edge dislocation. You can also have negative edge dislocations. I mean, this is just a simple notation. Okay, you can also have a plane ending here. Okay, you can have plane starting from here, and the plane is ending here. So what will you say? You will have an ulta thing. Okay, you will have we will have a reverse thing. So you will have a negative edge dislocation where this outward line, okay, this perpendicular line, this outward line, vertical line is pointing down. So that's the only thing. That's the only difference. So that is a negative edge dislocation. Okay. So this, at the interface. So what I was talking is at the interface, you will have what? You will have dislocations. So you will have an array of parallel edge dislocations. Note these 3 words very, very clearly and carefully. See, I said at a tilt boundary, I'm saying at a tilt boundary, you will have, or a tilt boundary comprises of an array. Why am I saying array? I'm saying, see, let's see an array, this number of arrays. See, because this will not end, right? I mean, this will be continuous along the X, Y, and the Z direction. Okay, so this will be an array, continuous array. It comprises of a continuous array of parallel edge dislocation. So this dislocation is parallel to this dislocation parallel to this dislocation, and all are the edge dislocations. So, so always remember this thing. Make a note of this: that a tilt boundary should always comprise of an array of parallel edge dislocations. Now I will explain these things very clearly. This d is equal to b upon theta. What is that? I will explain the next slide. But till now, is it clear? Is this thing clear to all?
Yes, Priya.
Oh, it is clear. Oh, very good. Any other guys? I mean, only one guy is answering yes and no. Remaining guys, what is the case? Are you listening? Are you interested?
Yes, sir. Clear.
It's clear. Oh, very good. So,
Yes.
fine. Okay. Now, so we can proceed then. This is very good. So, d is equal to b by theta. What is this? Okay. So you might be thinking, what the heck is this? No, this is nothing too much. Okay, now okay, I will tell you one more thing. Okay, this I told you a symmetric tilt boundary. Okay, so guys, can you tell me why do you think this is symmetric? What is symmetric here? I will tell you the answer, but I want to extract this answer out of you. What is symmetric here? Symmetric tilt boundary, isn't it? Why do you think it is symmetric? Think and tell. See, I will give you a hint. This arrangement and this arrangement, I mean, here they might not look the same, but let us consider that these two look the same. So, where is the symmetry here? There's some symmetry, right? Symmetry.
On a larger scale, it looks like a symmetry, but when we look close, then
yeah, that
it
is
doesn't
it's a
fit
very
in,
good.
no?
Yeah, it doesn't fit in. That I'm saying that you know, even when you look at using a microscope, you'll not be able to see proper symmetry. But okay, if you look at a larger scale, now let's not go into that much details. Let's start with keep with the basics. We call it symmetry. See, why am I calling it symmetric? Is because see, now if you have a line, okay, if you have a vertical line which is separating the entire thing, just you have to imagine. See, in grain boundary, you have to imagine a lot of things. See, if you have a vertical line which is separating this theta, okay, this theta is getting separated by a vertical line, okay. So what will happen? So this, so if you are extending this line and you are extending this line, so theta by 2, this is also theta by 2. So theta by 2 and theta by 2, so that will give rise to theta. In this case, I mean, definitely in this case it is fine, and so that is the reason why we call it symmetric tilt boundary. So symmetric tilt boundary is nothing. So what is a symmetric tilt boundary? If you want to learn a definition, the definition is very simple. So it's a boundary or a tilt boundary in which grains, both the adjoining grains, are misoriented by an equal extent. Okay, so are misoriented by equal extent along an axis, okay, or along the rotation axis. Okay, so if you look at this, I'm sorry, yeah. So if you look at this rotation axis, so if you have this this vertical line and you consider that to be the rotation axis, okay, this vertical line now, isn't, you have to consider this vertical line as the rotation axis. So for example, here we cannot consider this as a rotation axis. Rather, the rotation axis has to be somewhat like this. This cannot be the rotation axis, right? Because this cannot be rotated to get this. Rather, the rotation axis has to come out of the board. Okay, it is the rotation axis is coming out of the board. Okay, in this case. So, and if you consider so what do I say? That if you consider the perpendicular to the rotation axis in the case of tilt boundary, the perpendicular to the rotation axis. Why do I say perpendicular? I'm saying this because if I'm talking of this line, right? I'm talking of this line. So this line is actually perpendicular to the rotation axis, because this is the rotation axis. Because see, the grains are rotated somewhat like, you know, this, right? I mean, in this case, the rotation axis should be towards you, not along the plane of the, or not along the screen, okay, or not parallel to the screen. It should be perpendicular to the screen, to your computer screens. So in that case, if that is the rotation axis, then the perpendicular to that line is the line which is going to separate these two misoriented grains by an equal extent, theta by 2, theta by 2. So that is called theta. So that is known as the symmetric tilt boundary. Okay, that is called symmetric. Right, and there's a symmetry, but now it need not be symmetric as well. I will explain it in some of the slides, in a later slide. Okay, let's look at the symmetric tilt boundary. Same thing. See, I told you, if you look at this, vertical line here, you see you get it separated by theta by 2, theta by 2, and that is nothing but, this is nothing but perpendicular to what? The rotation axis. I mean, which is towards you. Okay, which is coming towards you. And this is perpendicular to that line, or that rotation axis line. So here it is separating both the grains by an equal extent, theta by 2, theta by 2, where theta is the total misorientation angle. Okay. So here, now let us do one thing. I mean, you have seen, see, there are two dislocations here. So this is dislocation here, dislocation here, dislocation here. Okay. Now let us do one thing. Now let us take this, cut out this small portion and let us analyze this. Okay. I mean, this is very, very essential. Okay. You have to pay a bit of attention to this. So I'll tell you. So you take two dislocations. Okay. So you take a dislocation along one plane. I mean, as a discontinuity along one plane. Okay. So this is a discontinuity. This dislocation. I mean, there is a red line which is hiding this thing, but actually there is a dislocation which is here, and this dislocation I have represented here. Similarly, if you look at a dislocation here, this is the dislocation. So I mean, here it is to the left, but you can, I mean, for simplicity I have put it to the right because that looks a bit easy to understand. Nothing is that difficult. So if you look at the core of dislocation, see, a core of dislocation actually lies at the intersection. Okay, the vertical line and the horizontal line is the intersection, which is also known as as a region within a dislocation. See, if you now look at the micromechanics, I'm not going into that much details, but if you look at a dislocation also always has a region which is where all the linear elastic fracture mechanics fails. Okay, each and every component of stress within in this particular region of the dislocation, not in all parts. Okay, only in this core of the dislocation is plastic. There is no elasticity associated in this region of dislocation. Again, that is the most essential part. Why? Because when you talk of dislocation to dislocation distance, because you talk of the upper dislocation, and this dislocation is this one. And if you look at talk of the distance d is nothing but the distance from one core, the core of the one dislocation, to the core of the other dislocation. Okay, remember this thing very clearly. So if you have so basically when you have this two dislocations, you can actually imagine this entire configuration to be, for simplicity, you can actually this entire configuration to be a right angle triangle where, see, if B, now I have to explain everything. See, this first thing is that D is nothing but the separation between the dislocations. Okay, D, that is a D, capital D. Now if you look at the B, I already taught that B is nothing but the Bugger's vector. Okay, is a lattice translational vector. Now if you look at this dislocation and this dislocation, what is the horizontal shift or the horizontal distance between this dislocation and this dislocation? So the horizontal shift or the horizontal distance is nothing but B by 2, isn't it? And so if you look at B by 2 and this is D, since people always try to make things simple, of course. So they're trying to think, okay, now they're trying to they have tried to put a model. I mean, Reed and Shockley initially proposed this model, for the symmetrical boundary, which is equal to theta by 2, right? Because see, this line and this this is theta by 2. Similarly, if you look at this and horizontal, this one is a horizontal, so this is also theta by 2. Okay, not horizontal, rather vertical line. This is also theta by 2. Okay, so this is for the symmetric tilt boundary. So here, mathematically, what we can say? No, the misorientation at the boundary. Okay, the misorientation at the boundary, or maybe theta or theta by 2. Actually, in this case, not exactly theta, is related to the spacing between the dislocations D by the following relation. What relation? So if you look at this particular configuration of a right angle triangle, what you can say is that if this is theta by 2, this is theta by 2, right? So sine theta by 2 will be equal to B by 2D. Okay, so B by 2 pi D means B by 2D. Here B is the Bugger's vector. So now make it a very simple. So making it very simple. Now the question is that one of the doubts in the last class was that why do we consider 15 degree only as the separation between a low angle boundary and a high angle boundary? Okay. So for that we will arrive at it. But now let us think of mathematics only. Now already we have thought about the metallurgical aspect of it, or the crystallographic aspect of it. That you have two dislocations at two different planes, and these two dislocations have the core of the dislocation gets split. Is separated by a distance d, and of course you have the horizontal shift between the dislocations as equal to B by 2, where B is the Bugger's vector. And since we are talking of the symmetric tilt boundary, so the angular difference or the angular separation between these two dislocations is equal to theta by 2. Okay, now if you look at the trigonometry, simple trigonometry, okay, there's no rocket science. So sine theta by 2 is equal to B by 2D. Okay, B is the Bugger's vector. D is nothing but the separation between the width of the dislocations. So if you if you make this theta is very, very small. So if you make theta is almost equal to 1 degree, 2 degree, 3 degree, even like around 15 degree. That's what I'm saying. If you have theta is very small.
Where
for example,
the distance between horizontal distance between two x dislocations, you said it to be B by 2. That is
not.
predetermined or assumption or
That is, very
experimentally
good.
determined.
Yes. See, experimentally, if you look at it, experimentally there are certain proofs. I mean, have you heard of this term HRTM, high resolution TM? Have you heard of this? I will tell you that. Have you heard of this
No,
TM? Okay, don't worry. So
we have heard of TM and SEM,
TM,
but
not
not
TM,
high
but
resolution.
that's it. High resolution, yeah, I will tell you. See, high resolution will exactly. I think I can show you some of the images, but okay. Now let us first talk about this. Okay, so your question is, has this been? So your question is, has this B that I'm talking of been determined experimentally or theoretically, or there is some assumption? So initially when this model was proposed, this Reed-Shockley model was proposed, okay, it was proposed around, I think, 1960s or something. I mean, that time we didn't have that powerful TMs, okay. I mean, the TMs were only we were able to see your basic dislocations and I mean, not dislocations also. I mean, even they could see some dislocations, provided that you have to be a very good operator, and then you can see something. I mean, I think I also showed you dislocation in one day in the class, right? I mean, this how does dislocation looks like, but then you cannot see all these things. So for that, people, what they did is that for simplicity, this is an assumption. For simplicity, what people did is, so that's what I'm telling. This is a model. Okay, this is a model. This is called the Reed-Shockley model. So any model in mathematics or any field of science, any model will always have some assumptions that the separation between the atom here and the here and here and here. So this is equal to B. But in real, see, for example, if you have atom here and the atom here, they are the same. Then this assumption might work. I'm saying this assumption might work. That is not a problem. But now, if you have an atom, so for example, an iron atom here, you have an aluminum atom here, or you have an iron atom here again, you have an aluminum atom here, or you have a nickel atom in between. For example, recently there is a huge trend of working in high entropy alloys, and so for example, you have different atoms along the different intersections here. Then you cannot talk of V, because why you cannot talk of V is because the for iron the Bogus vector is different, right? Why Bogus vector is different? Because it has got a different lattice parameter, different crystal structure. Because iron room temperature crystal structure is BCC, alpha iron, right? And if you have aluminum, then it will be having the room temperature. Anyways, I mean, it will be having a room temperature crystal structure is FCC, face centered cubic, and it is also going to have a different lattice parameter. So in that case, the B for the aluminum and the B for the iron will be totally different. And so in that case, you cannot. So that's what I'm saying. In that case, this model, this model will not work at all. Okay, this model won't work at all. But then for simplicity, because people have to start with something which is very simple. Okay, they have to start with something which is very simple. So
In this model, we assume the distance between these two be B by 2.
Correct. They assume the distance between, I mean, not the distance between dislocations, rather the horizontal shift of one dislocation with respect to the other. Okay, I mean, that's a very simple thing. See, the other problem that might happen is, this is one assumption. That is an assumption, I mean, that they have given. See, there is another problem that can happen if you have, see, in real life, you will never have a situation like this. So I will tell you, if you suppose, even if you come across, even if you manage to get you are having a very high resolution TM and you are able to see dislocations, you will hardly have a situation like this where your this parallel sets of edge dislocations are having the same sign. Is very hard. I mean, in this case, it's called a perfect dipole arrangement. Okay, let's not drag into this. But what happens is, this dislocation might not be in this orientation. Dislocation also changes orientation. For example, this dislocation might be tilted. Okay, this dislocation might be tilted, like it might be like tilted along the northwest direction or northeast direction, not facing upward, not facing along the north direction. So in this or in that case, this model, this model will fail. Definitely. I mean, see, any model will be only applicable for a certain thing based on certain assumptions. Okay, there's always a rule in science. So the horizontal distance is B by 2. Okay, I can explain you more, but okay. But are you satisfied with this explanation, or I need to explain more?
Now, I guess there's no room for discussion because it's already an assumption. So, no point of arguing about.
It's okay. No. There should be some argument, because when you look more into grain boundaries or read more about grain boundaries, you will understand that this assumption will only work for the beginning. I mean, for the beginners level where you're trying to learn the tilt and the twist boundary. Because see, the tilt boundary itself, if you now what the problems I've told you now, if you have different atoms along all the atomic columns, and if you have different orientations of the dislocations, this model will not work at all. This model will completely fail. So that is something which always keep in mind. Okay, this is I mean this is one of the models. Okay, so this is just an assumption. But so here, if you look at an assumption, okay, now if you come back, so this is so this assumption, if you come back and you see at the sine theta by 2 equals to b by 2d, so b by 2d. Okay, so here if theta is very small, so what will happen? Theta by 2, right? Sine theta is almost equal to theta, and that is equal to b by 2d. So by 2 cancelled. So what will happen? B is equal to, at least nearly, and that's what I'm approximating it, because it cannot be exactly equal to, because sine theta by 2 is approximately equal to theta, but not exactly equal to theta, right? I mean, it's not exactly equal. I mean, there is some decimal, third, fourth digit of decimal will be different. So okay, but B almost equals to d theta. Now this formula, this looks very simple, but this formula has some practical implications. I will tell you what is the implication. Now if theta is small, now what happens? Now suppose you have theta small, suppose you have theta is equal to 1 degree. So this works very well. This equation works pretty well, isn't it? And then you are increasing theta 1 degree, 2 degree, 3 degree, 4 degree, 5 degree. So you keep on increasing it, okay? And then what ultimately happens? You keep on increasing. Let's see. Now the thing is a B Bugger's vector. If you look at, for example, iron. Now I'm just not talking of that. I'm just have to consider that the Bugger's vector is constant, because now if you consider iron lattice parameter at room temperature will be iron wala lattice parameter only. I mean, but that is again not a sim. I mean, this is a very simple assumption, because then but again the Bugger's vector actually changes along the interface. I mean, it's not the same. I mean, that is if you read more about grain boundaries in research when you are doing like I'm doing. So I know that B is not the same along the interface. It continuously changes at the interface, and it also changes based on strain, dislocation arrangement, thousands of other factors. I mean, even people nowadays don't even know how to determine this Bugger's vector along the grain boundary. Although there are, I think, only 1 or 2 papers in this field, research papers in this field, you won't be able to find it out. So if you have B almost equal to d theta, and see what they have done. Okay, so what these guys, Reed Shockley have proposed is that B, one of your questions was if B, that is the question. So B is nothing but the Bugger's vector of the Bugger's vector of atoms in the bulk. If you look at this is not the interface. See, this is not the interface. This is the interface, but this is within one of the grains, the grain 1, and this is also the other grain. This is a grain 2. So if you look at the atomic arrangement within this grains, okay, not the interface at all, then you see that here you have the Bugger's vector B, which is nothing but the Bugger's vector of the dislocation, or of any dislocation that might be present here. I mean, here there is no dislocation, but I mean, if there is a dislocation here, then it is B is nothing but the Bugger's vector of any dislocation in the bulk of the grain, and which in this model they have considered it to be equal to the what? Equal to the lattice translational vector, or equal to the interatomic spacing actually. But exactly, when this is the one of the worst assumptions that someone can make. But I mean, to start with this tilt and twist boundary, this is the starting point. This is the beginning point. I mean, there have been number of rebuttals, or there have been number of contradictions. I mean, people have written a number of reports which for criticizing this kind of assumption. But I mean, this assumption still stands the best, although proposed around 50-60 years ago. Okay, I mean, when people didn't even have high quality TMs, okay, or high resolution TMs, people still could see this. I mean, people still could think of dislocations, and that's a very big achievement. That time nothing was there. No powerful microscopic technique was there, and that people could still think this is the case. And this actually, I have also recently been working on this, and I have been finding that this model is really very, very essential. It's quite helpful. Maybe in scientific terms this might not be realistic, okay, but this is helpful. I mean, there's certain calculations where you have to have, when you are going into that much of mathematical intricacies, you have to make certain assumptions. Okay, there this model is very good. Because that gives values very directly. Okay, now coming back to the point. Point is, if you are increasing theta, this B is constant. Why? Because B is the Bugger's vector of the dislocation within the bulk. So, for example, if you look at iron Bugger's vector at room temperature, that will be remaining the same only. Unless you change the temperature, or unless there is a phase transformation, or unless you deform the material, this B is not going to change at all. Okay, B, okay, yeah. So if B is constant, okay, so this left hand side is constant. So right hand side, you are increasing theta. So what will happen? D will decrease, isn't it? So theta increases, D decreases because B is constant. So for a fixed B. So in that case, what will happen is that to answer the last class's doubt, and there is a huge amount of metallurgy related, but make it simple. So as the misorientation increases, the spacing between the dislocations D is reduced. Okay, the spacing between the B is reduced. Now you have to imagine. So suppose that you are increasing this theta. Okay, you are increasing this theta. What exactly happens is that what is reducing? This distance is reducing. This distance is reducing. So in that case, until at large angles, where the description of the boundary in terms of simple dislocation arrangements doesn't make sense. How? I will tell you. If you have around this dislocation and this dislocation, and you have theta equals to 15 degree, and you have so guys, can you tell me, if you have calculator, can you tell me what is the value of I mean, if it is 15 degree, if theta is 15 degree, then how much is the radians? How much is it in terms of radians? Any idea? Radians is simple, huh? 15 into pi by 360. So how much it will be? How much it is? Can anyone calculate, please? Any calculator? It's around something. B is equal to 0.13 D. Okay, so B is equal to 0.13 times D. Okay, if theta is 15 degree and theta, put it in radian, so 15 into pi by 360. So how much it will be? Pi by 360, right? Or how much? No, pi by 180 or pi by 360. Aniket, how much is that? From the degree to pi, it is into pi by, I mean in radian it is into pi by 360 or what? Anyone can help this calculation? I think I am getting it correct only. 15 into 3.14 divided by 360 is 0.131 D. Is it that much? You guys understood, right, what I'm saying? Or I think you guys are confused. Do you guys understanding or? Hello? Hello guys, are you there? Hello? I don't know. Guys, any idea? B is equal to d theta. This is fine, right? Or what?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So B is equal to d theta. Guys, I mean, are you able to understand this thing? I mean, I wanted to actually interact with this thing actually. This B is nearly equal to d theta. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sir,
So
it was
now
approximately taken to d theta, no, sir?
approximately taken d theta. Why? Because the theta is small, very small. So it will be
Yes,
theta by 2 is equal to b by 2 d, 2 to cancel. So b nearly equal to 2 d
yeah.
theta. Now the question is, see, I have one small doubt in this calculation. If you take the theta is 15 degree, okay, take theta is 15
Yes,
degree. If you put it in radian, how much it will be? 15 into 3.14 by 360, no? Now or how much? 360, right? Or 180? I
Yes,
think
sir. 360 only we have.
then it will
360
be,
only, sir.
yeah, so it will be then how much? 0.131. Yeah, so
Yes, sir.
yeah, B is equal to 0.131 times D. This means your these two dislocations are going to kind of merge with each other. If these, so now think what is going to be the case. If two dislocations are going to merge with each other, or because their cores are going to overlap, this core is going to overlap with this core. What is going to happen? Ultimately, this entire arrangement will be unstable. This is not going to. I mean, this visualizing. So that's what I'm saying. This model will again fail because now the visualizing because visualizing a dislocation like this is not possible, because it's something which we call an instability. We cannot think of now an overlap of one dislocation, of the core of one dislocation with the core of the other dislocation. In that case, this model will again completely fail. So that is the reason why I said in the last class that 15 degree is the trademark that Rita and Shockley proposed. Is also called the bubble draft model, also BUBBLE RFT bubble draft model, based on which you can separate a low angle boundary from a high angle boundary. Okay, so
High angle.
yeah, so high angle boundary, let's not go into the details. So it's a low angle boundary we are ourselves trying to focus on. So this is something, and this is the reason. Okay, so if you go beyond 15 degrees, this model will completely fail because both these dislocations, the core will start merging. If the core starts merging, then you are in huge trouble because this model will not at all work. And this model will continuously will fail because this will lead to instability, right? I mean, this will have strain, this will have a certain repulsion. Here there will be some repulsion. Here there will also be some repulsion, and this model will fail. It's not possible to work in this way. So definitely you have to have this model is valid only till theta is equal to 15 degree, not more than that. I mean, it's this model in that way. This model is only applicable for low angle grain boundary. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if we now look at the next slide. Okay. So this one. Hence, the dislocation model of grain boundary fails beyond theta equals to 15 degree, or for theta beyond 15 degree. So now if you look at tilt boundary, so it may not be symmetrical also. You know, you have, see, I said in one of the cases that if it is theta by 2 here, it might be that one of the grains along the misorientation axis or along the misorientation, I mean the rotation axis. Suppose if this is the rotation axis, for example, here if this is the rotation axis, then you are looking at the top of this misorientation of this grain boundary plane. So are you asking something? You want to ask?
No, sir, no. No, sir.
Oh, okay. So here, for example, if you look at the top of this, grain boundary plane, and you have atoms, there's a three-dimensional arrangement of atoms. So what you're going to see is that your theta, I mean this, so suppose you consider one of the planes here. So suppose this plane here, and you look at one of the grains. So this misorientation is comparatively more than the extent of misorientation that you see here. So in this case, we don't see a symmetric tilt boundary, rather we see an asymmetrical tilt boundary. Or for your level, I will explain you in a bit simple way. So so if you look at this, okay, if you look at this diagram, so here it is not exactly theta by 2. So in this case, it is theta by 2, and as a result, we call it symmetric tilt boundary. But if you look at asymmetric tilt boundary, it should be this angle is equal to theta 1 and this angle is equal to theta 2, and this theta 1 and theta 2 is not equal in case of asymmetric tilt boundary. So that's the reason why it is asymmetric. Why it is asymmetric? So it is. So how do we define an asymmetric tilt boundary? It is by this way, that if you have if you have the two grains misoriented unequally, I mean not equally, right? So unequally along the line which is perpendicular to the misorientation axis or the misorientation or the rotation axis, which is towards you or towards out of the screen, pointing out of the screen. So then you got to say that this that kind of a tilt boundary is termed as the asymmetric tilt boundary. But this is, so since in this case the theta is divided equally between that line which is perpendicular to the to the misorientation axis, then this is termed as the symmetrical tilt boundary. But in the other case where you have theta 1 is not equal to theta 2, this is theta 1 and theta 2, so in that case we call it an asymmetric tilt boundary. And especially in a microstructure, you come across most of the tilt boundaries may not be asymmetric. May not be symmetric as well. I mean, most of the tilt boundaries may be or are rather asymmetric actually. So you should just put this in mind, keep this in mind. In that case, the boundary is filled with asymmetric dislocations. That is, the question is, say here if this is theta 1 and this is theta 2, so here maybe the dislocation Bogus vector is B, but here the dislocation Bogus vector will not be B. It will be something around B prime or B dash, whatever. So it will be different from the Bogus vector along this, I mean in the bulk of this grain. Okay, so if you look at that, so in that case, this model again, this model will again not work. Okay, but again the observation, I mean we use this model, I mean most of the times there is no model actually, there is no model which is better than this to explain or to separate a low angle boundary from a high angle boundary. But although this has been proposed for symmetric tilt boundary, but still, even if you have this asymmetric tilt boundary, people still use this model only to separate between low angle boundary and high angle boundary. But then why? Because there is no model even within this 16 years which can be better than this model to explain, this 15 degree or this difference between a low angle and a high angle boundary. Especially for asymmetric tilt boundaries, it is nearly impossible because the B is not constant. Then you have to take a lot of both the contributions. You have to take B prime and a lot of other contributions. That's quite hard, or that's quite complicated, rather very complicated. So that's something. Okay, so based on that, I think this is the last slide. So if the boundary, so twist boundary, guys, any idea? Twist boundary? What is the twist boundary? Twist boundary.
No, sir. No, sir. I didn't have any idea.
Okay, I will tell you. So you know what
Okay.
is a tilt? Okay, so guy, you know what is a tilt boundary, right? Tilt boundary, you know, right?
Yes, sir.
What is a tilt boundary? So, if you, so what did I say? The misorientation axis is parallel to the grain boundary plane.
Yes, sir.
Correct? Grain boundary plane, right? But here, what is the case? See, the misorientation axis. So the misorientation axis, if you look at this in this case, so the misorientation axis is normal to what? It is normal to the grain boundary. It is here. It is normal to the grain boundary plane. It is in the earlier case, the misorientation axis was parallel to the grain boundary plane. This is a
Parallel to grain boundary plane, sir. This was
yeah. This
perpendicular
is
to grain boundary.
this is called a twist boundary. This is known as a twist boundary. Okay.
Yes.
So this is how you separate between a tilt and a twist boundary. Okay. So
Tilt and
here,
twist. Okay.
yes. So if you look at this twist boundary, so it's nothing but I mean it's very hard to explain to you at this stage, but just remember this thing, that a boundary, this kind of boundary will not have edge dislocations. Rather, this kind of boundary is completely consisting of screw dislocations. Okay. So and because why? Because the misorientation can be described. This kind of, see, it's like a twist. You put your hands. Okay. If you join your hands, okay, join your left palm and your right palm, and you just try to twist your right palm with respect to your left palm. Okay. It's like this, isn't it? I mean, this is your right palm, this is your left palm. You try to twist your right palm with respect to the left palm, okay, by a certain angle, which is termed as the misorientation angle, or the theta. Yeah, you got it, or you are understanding, right?
Yeah, I understand.
Okay, so the misorientation is so basically the misorientation is described by a relative rotation of two grains about an axis. Okay, and that axis is nothing. Don't worry about this. So this axis is nothing but the misorientation axis. Okay, so relative rotation of the two grains about an axis, right? I mean, this grain is getting rotated along this axis. See, there is rotation along this axis, and by a certain angle theta, and this theta is actually getting reflected here. This is called the misorientation angle, isn't it? So in that case, it is possible to produce misorientations between. So of course, so once you have a screw dislocation, and I mean once you have learned about tilt and twist boundary, you can also think of other things. No? And so you can think of a case where you actually have a boundary which is having both the tilt and the twist character. It's a mixed boundary rather. In that case, we call it mixed low angle boundary. See, in the microstructure, most of the boundaries that you see are actually comprising of a mixture of tilt and twist boundaries. Tilt boundary means that I have told you that this grain would actually be having the misorientation which is parallel to the grain boundary plane, and in this case, the twist case, it is the misorientation axis, or this axis of rotation, is perpendicular to the grain boundary plane. So you can also think of this situation that you can have a boundary which is having both the tilt and the twist character. That's called a mixed boundary. So in that case, the boundary structure will comprise of a network of edge and screw dislocations, isn't it? So did you understand this thing?
Yes, bhai, I understood.
Okay.
But the mixture of two tilt and twist boundary, the diagram will be
The
how
diagram will be.
means.
I will tell you. I will tell you. See, that diagram I didn't
Okay.
draw, but I will tell you. If you take your left palm and your right palm, okay, think of just try to join your left and right palm. Simple. Pale, you just try to connect both your left and right palm. Okay. Then what you try to do is that you try to twist your right palm by around 90 degree or by around 45 degree with respect to your left palm. Okay. So what do you see?
Okay.
In this case, now you see a twist, right? There's a twist. 45 degree twist हो रहा है तुम्हारे your right palm, right? I mean, got
Yes,
it, right?
bhai.
Correct. Now what you
Yes, bhai.
do? Now what you do? Same in the same configuration of your left and right palm. You try to उसको क्या कहते हैं? You try to make what I will say. You try to move your left and right palm a bit apart, but starting from your bottom. Start from the bottom of your left and right palm.
Yes, bhai, understood. By not moving the down part, and we have to twist like.
Yes. You just it's like this in both. So it will having both character. First, पहले क्या किया? First, you just try to rotate your right palm, okay, perpendicular to both the palms. You try to rotate the right palm by an angle equal to 45 degree with respect to your left palm. Correct. So that is so in this case, the twist angle is equal to 45 degree. Correct. The twist angle is 45 degree, right? And that's a simple thing, right? Now, so in this case, in this case, the thing is the grain boundary plane or the boundary plane is not changing, right? The boundary plane is the plane which is common to both the grains. See, so if you look at your left and right palm, what is the plane? Plane is the palm, right? The palm of your hand. The palm of your hand, in case of a pure twist, is not changing, right? I mean, you are not having a separate grain boundary plane at all, right? It will have the same palm, right? Same palm. वो जो same palm है, that will be the great boundary plane. Now think this is a twist character, 45 degree. Now what you have to do is that you have to try to remove, I mean, to separate your left and right hand. Okay, in this configuration only, not going to the previous configuration. So in this configuration only, in that case, now if you try to do that, and suppose you are giving a tilt angle of 15 degree. So in that case, the tilt angle is equal to 15 degree, and in the second case, now if you after you do that 15 degree Vela rotation, you will have the grain boundary plane itself is also changing. Why? Because now you are having a tilt character also, right? I mean, you are having a tilt character and as well as a twist character. So you will actually have a plane which is intermediate between both your palms, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. Understood.
Got it?
Yes, I got it.
Okay. So in most of the in any microstructure, in most of the microstructures, you are going to come across a boundary, or different boundaries, low angle boundaries I'm talking of. High angle boundary I'm not going into. Low angle boundary, which comprises of a mixture of tilt and twist boundary. It's very rare. Okay, I will tell you, it's like 1 out of a million chance that you will be able to come across a pure twist or a pure tilt boundary. It's very rare case. I mean the configuration itself is like that. Most of the materials, if you look at dislocations, the configuration itself will be like that, because it's very hard to produce a pure tilt or a pure twist boundary in any material, any metallic material especially. It's very hard to get it. Okay, remember this. Okay. So today, with this, we will be trying to wrap up this. You can ask me doubts now.
No, Bhaiya, I understood all.
Oh, you understood all this.
About the twist boundary and the tilt boundary.